another video. We are still looking at the land acquisition process in Kenya. If you watched my last video, we now have our title deed for Starehe Manor. Finally, almost 1 year later from when I bought the property, I finally got my title deed and it has my name on it. I am so excited, guys, and that's why I am doing this series, because the long delay, I acquired the property in December but only got the title in September. So that's how many: December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, 9 months to get the title deed, because as I mentioned in the last video, the property had some issues. So when I bought the property, I did my land search, which basically is a process that is used at the lands office or land registry to confirm the name of the person that a given piece of land is registered in, the land number, the size, and address of the person. So I did the land search, and it was a very clean title. It had the name of the person who had sold me the piece of land. So I went ahead and decided to also look at the green card. So the green card basically is a document kept at the land registry that gives a history of a given piece of land or property from the time that land was opened or divided to the present time. So that too was clean. And then, of course, because I didn't have the time to do the land registration process myself, so I assigned that duty to my surveyor, paid him the cash, and sat pretty waiting for the title deed. So come February, nothing. March, nothing. April 2023, I was like, something is fishy here, because he has previously transferred other pieces of land to me, and it took less than 2 months for the entire process, and that is in Homa Bay County. So I was like, there must be something wrong. So I decided to do my own independent search, because I was like, in Academy Oshua. So I decided to do my own independent search, and lo and behold, when I did the new search again, remember I had done one in December, it was clean. So I come back in April to do another search, and I find out that somebody has put a caution on this property. So what is a caution? So caution basically is a process where somebody goes to the lands office and requests the land officer, called a registrar, to stop activities or other people on a given piece of land. So somebody had actually gone and put a caution on this piece of land, and they were claiming that the guy who had sold me the piece of land had previously sold the same piece of land to them like 10 years ago. So here became my main problem. So I had to first establish if this was the reality. So it was an issue of his word versus his word, like the one who had put the caution versus whoever had sold the land. So I followed up the issue, went to the lands office, and that's the process I'm gonna take you guys through. So generally, when somebody puts a caution on your land, they're supposed to file, it's almost like a claim, and they're supposed to file evidences to show that indeed they have an interest in this piece of land. So when we went to the lands office and checked the documents that had been used for filing, it was almost clear that this person who had put the caution was just being malicious, because the forms they were claiming that had been used for the land transfer did not have any signatures of the guy they claim had sold them the land. There was no photos of this guy, there was no ID card, there was no PIN certificate copy, there was nothing. And you cannot transfer land without these items. They were also claiming that they had paid this guy 400,000. Guys, 400,000 10 years ago in Kenya was a lot of money. And so is it even today. So there's no way somebody could have paid another person 400, and this was a company actually. There's no way a company could have paid an individual 400,000 shillings without a digital footprint. Like they could have probably sent by mobile money, or even a bank check, or even like online banking or something like that. And there was no evidence of such. So once I had checked the documents, I was almost certain that on like a 90-10 scale, I was kind of sure that this guy who had sold me the land was not the wrong, and this was just a case of somebody being malicious. And then one other interesting thing, if you've been watching the rest of my videos, you will realize that this family that sold me this piece of land, the money that I paid them, they used it to construct their house. So the whole property was initially 4 acres. So they only sold to me 3.5 acres and then kept the remaining half an acre for their own use. And they actually used the money that I paid them to build their own house. So this obviously was another thing that made me not suspect this guy who had sold me the land, because with the amount of money that I gave them, if they had actually sold this land previously, I don't think they could have used it to build on the same property. That would be very foolish of them. So this guy, I was very fortunate. He was like, Eva, there's no way I could con you. This property, you're the first person I am selling it to. And then I went again and I checked with the chiefs. I went around, talked to the people in the community, and they confirmed to me that this family had never sold their land. And this is the advantage of buying land in rural areas. People know each other. And usually before you do a transfer, I don't know about other places, but I know in rural Kenya, you have to go to the chief, you have to go to the village elder, all of them, people sit down, they eat, and like it's a whole community affair. So when I called all these people who had previously been at the community affair to transfer the land to me, all of them confided in me and they said, these guys never sold this property to anybody. So I was very fortunate, because now this guy, it's like we were on the same side. He was like, me, I didn't sell my property to nobody. So usually the challenge comes in when there's a caveat on your property and the person has indeed actually sold land to 2 different people. They've sold it to you and they've sold it to another person or something of that nature. So fortunately for me, that was not the case. And I was able to establish that fact that indeed the person who had sold me this land was being sincere and the other party was just being malicious. So came now the process of how to remove the caution. So as I've already mentioned, basically what the caution does, when somebody files a caution at the land registry, it prevents the currently registered owner from selling or even doing any transactions on that property. So if you're wondering, so there's a few questions that people asked me. So does the caution or the caveat lapse automatically after a certain period? Unfortunately, the caution or the caveat cannot lapse. Somebody puts it there, somebody has to remove it. So there are 3 different ways that the caveat can be lifted. So the first way is by the person who the land is registered in their name, going to the lands registrar and filing for removal of caution. So generally what happens in such a case is that you have to go to the land registrar's office, and there is a form that you fill. So like in our case, it was Homa Bay County, the lands office. We went, there's a cyber there. You just, I think I paid 10 shillings and they gave me the form. It's from LRA 70. LRA 70, you can download it from the Ministry of Lands or just go to any lands office. There's always somebody there who has a cyber and they will give you this form at 10 shillings. So that's the first form was the person whom the land is registered in their name fills that form, LRA 70. So like in this case was the guy who was selling me the land. And then the other documents you're going to need, you must know the land title number. So that's why, guys, it is important. So like in our case, we had submitted all the documents for the transfer, including the original title deed. Fortunately for me, everything I had submitted to the lands office for transfer of title, I had copies of them, both in soft copy and hard copy. Because you're going to need the land title number, you fill it in this LRA 70. And then you're going to need the ID, copy of ID of the person the land is registered in their name. You're going to need the PIN, copy of their PIN, and you're going to need the address, their postal address of the registered landowner, and then you're going to need now a copy of the registered caution. So this caution, you get it from the lands office. So for me, I had it when I did the search. When the search came back, it had a section written, the land has a caution, and they put the details. So you just get that from the lands office. And then once you get this document, the LRA 70, you need to go and have it, what is it called? You go before an advocate of the High Court, that's like a lawyer, and they stamp with the nominal stamp duty, and they like stamp it for you. So for me, I paid 1,000 shillings for that. It's sort of like an affidavit, I think. So I paid like 1,000 shillings. So when I had all these documents together, I gave the guy who had sold me the land, he filled it in. So in that LRA 70, there's a section where you write why you are removing the caution. So like in our case, we just wrote two things. I have never sold this land to this person we put the XX company, and have no intention of selling it to them. So we just put those two lines. So once we had this done, now we went to the registrar, and then we submitted our documents. So we explained ourselves. So me, I insisted on seeing the registrar. So most of the time they will tell you to just leave it there, like with the clerks and whatever. Me, I insisted I want to see the registrar. So we went with the landowner, we went even with the chief, we explained ourselves and said, this is what happens. This is what happened. These people are claiming this land. Here is the chief. Here is everybody, blah, blah, blah. And they are here to attest that this person did not sell the property. So the registrar took in our documents, and then they told us to come back the next day. They're going to give us a letter. So this letter, it's written to both the cautioner and the cautionee. Is that English? So the company that was claiming this land that they were sold to, they were written to this letter. And basically what this letter says that, oh, blah, 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 this caution is being contested. We are giving you 30 days to come and like give evidence and blah, blah, blah. So after the 30 days lapsed, unfortunately for us, during these 30 days, the registrar was transferred. A new registrar came in. So he was like, okay, so ideally, since these guys never came after 30 days, the caution should have been lifted. But the registrar was like, okay, let's give them another 2 weeks. So he wrote another letter to them and gave a copy to now the guy who had sold to me. And then, so this second round, I even personally took that letter and posted it by registered mail to the address this company had given. So after 2 weeks, there was no response. Then the registrar was like, okay, let's give them 1 more week. So the registrar gave them another 1 week. They never responded. So me, I was like, this is too much. So we went back to the registrar's office and we're like, these guys are claiming this land, but they've never come back to give evidence. So generally what is supposed to have happened, if these guys genuinely had bought this land as they were claiming, what is supposed to happen is that once you receive this letter from the registrar that your caution is being contested, you're supposed to come to the registrar's office. And then, so it could happen like they would give you a date, like let's say they give you next week. So you, the one claiming the land and the person in whom the land is registered in their name, they come to the registrar's office and the registrar tries to arbitrate, to hear both sides of the story, to try and ascertain who actually owns this property. Like in our case, this company was claiming they paid 400,000. This guy sold them land. The question is, how did they transfer land? No signature, no PIN, no title copy, no pictures, no ID copy, nothing. So it was so clear these people are lying. No evidence of payment. They didn't even attach a transfer document or anything to show that they had transferred money to these people. So what happens is that if you come now to that meeting and the registrar tries to arbitrate and you people fail to agree, then the next thing now what you guys have to do, whoever feels like they have the balls or the energy, usually goes to court, or you go and fight it out. Like that's why you hear cases where people go and slash each other. But the next step you're supposed to do is to move to a court of law. So when you move to court, to have, like if I was the aggrieved party and this company, we failed to agree, what I would do, I would move to court. And when I go to court, I go and file. And if the court finds that there were insufficient grounds for the caution to be put in the first place, then they would lift the caution. So that's the second time that the caution can be lifted. So the first time is if the person the land is registered in their name goes to the registrar of lands, and the registrar arbitrates and finds that indeed there was no sufficient grounds to put in the caution, like in our case. The second way is when you move to court and have the caution lifted. And then, as I've already mentioned, caution is usually indefinite. Oh, then the third person who can lift the caution is the one who has put it. Like this company can go and say, okay, fine, and we are lifting this caution. It's no longer whatever. Yeah. So those are the three people who can lift a caution. So generally, a caution is indefinite until it is lifted by a court, by the land registrar, or by the person who put the caution. If a cautioner dies, like the one who put the caution will only be removed through an order of the court. So let's say, for example, if this person who had put the caution was an individual and then they die before this caution issue had been sorted out, the only person who can lift it is by me having going to court and then the court making a decision in my favor. So once I go to court and I get an order from the court, what you're supposed to do is come back to the registrar and ask the registrar to lift it. But generally, for you to go to court, you must demonstrate enough interest on the land. So like in this case, this guy, the title deed was in his name. And if you buy land that is subject to caution, just know you're going to have trouble because you risk having the entire purchase nullified if the cautioner goes to court. So the best process is to first have the caution removed first before you make a purchase. Unless you find yourself in this situation, I found myself, I bought the land, it was a clean land, and then in the process of doing the transfer, somebody came and put a caution. But if you go to buy land, you do your land search, and then you find that the property has a caution, do not proceed with buying until this caution is lifted. So you've talked about if you go to the land registrar, you have to go and he will arbitrate it. If he agrees, if the cautioner agrees that indeed this was a mistake, then it's lifted. If you people disagree, then the dissatisfied party goes to court to ask for it to be lifted. So guys, that's the process I wanted to mention, that getting the caution removed was quite the process, but that's why I always insist before you purchase any property, visit the land registrar, do an official search, establish everything about the piece of land, and just know that if it has a caution, according to the law, nothing can and should be interfered with on that property that has a caution. Yeah, a court order can temporarily lift the caution, but generally we have where somebody for example decides to show up. So if you're fortunate to have a good registrar, like in our case where we had a very strong case and this other party did not come, then we had the caution lifted. But there's some cases whereby people can insist that they want to be bribed. For example, even I've seen cases whereby somebody sells to you land, like in my case, and then this other party comes and what can I say, like they come and not bribe and convince or even connive with the person who had sold me this land. Maybe if, let's say, I had offered 500,000, this person offers them 1 million, and then he's like, me, I already sold land to this person. But I was fortunate in my case, I found a man of God who stood by me, he stood on my side, and he was like, I don't know these people, I never sold my land to them. So I was very fortunate on that aspect. So that is what happened. That is what you do when you want to put a caution on your land in Kenya. That's what you do when you want to remove a caution on a piece of land in Kenya, and that's basically the process. If somebody is wrongfully claiming your property in Kenya, that's the process you have to go through. And I did this entire process without a lawyer. The only part I needed a lawyer was when we're filling in the LRA 70, and all I needed was a stamp of a lawyer. So at the Ministry of Lands in Homa Bay, the court is right next door. And of course, I didn't have trouble finding lawyers who had their stamps walking around. I just went to one and he agreed to stamp it for me. So I was able to go through this entire process by myself without involving any lawyer. The only cost I incurred was the 1,000 for the lawyer to stamp for me. And then we paid some fees. I don't remember how much it was, but it wasn't more than 3,000 for filing like the paper. No, did we pay? I can't remember. But the total to have that entire caution removed was like not more than 5,000. So guys, I hope this video was helpful. Let me know your stories, and if you have any questions, do feel free to contact me in the comment section below, and let me know which other topics you'd like for me to cover on this journey that I've had towards acquiring this property by the beaches of Lake Victoria. Thank you for joining me. I will see you on the next one. Bye.